Good Wednesday to you. Welcome to Box of Chocolate Wednesdays. Well, this week and possibly next week, I'm going to share with you a little bit about how sermons are prepared. Maybe best to say how my sermons are prepared. I don't know that I do it the way other people do it, but this is sort of inside the actor's studio, so to speak. Well, the funny thing is, it always begins with a calendar. I try twice a year to step away for a day or two. Sometimes it's just going out to the Furman Library. Sometimes it's actually able to get to a little cabin in the mountains or at the beach. And you get your calendar out and you sort of make a plan for the upcoming 6 months, okay? Now, the way you make that plan is first, it's a calendar. And let's just say that it happens to be the July to December end of the year. Well, you know that the last Sunday of November is when you're going to begin Advent. So you know that there's 3 or 4 Sundays there that are built to talk about Christmas and the coming of Christ. All right, you also know that in our case, we always have All Saints Day at the end of October. So you know that that day is a day where you're going to talk about the people who passed this year and their lives and our life of faith and what it means to trust in God and the promises of eternity. So you know that you've already got 4 or 5 dates that are sort of already taken. So you just kind of pencil all of that in. Then you know there's going to be a few dates that you're not going to be there. So you pencil those in, all right? So maybe you've penciled in 7 or 8 dates now. Then what I do is I would like sermons to be sort of relevant. So I think about what's going on in the lives of people. And people may be dealing with cancer. People may be dealing with a crisis, maybe a crisis like a divorce or something like that, and want God's presence or need God's presence or God's comfort. And so I begin to make a list of these sort of relevant situations that people in our congregation may be facing. And so you already had 7 or 8, you add to that maybe 4 or 5 more, maybe 6. So now you got 12, 13 things that are already filling the calendar up with. Then I have what I would call the staples. Just like a pantry has the staples that a family uses, there are some staples that I think that the Christian church needs to be reminded of periodically. Forgiveness, God's forgiveness, our need to forgive one another, God's love for all of us, God's asking us to love one another, how that love for other people works its way out in compassion and service. And so you can see that you're building sort of a list of things that we need to touch on. We have to touch on. These are staples. And so that may add to that list, 9, 10, 11 things. So now you're at 21, 22, 23 weeks of things that you could possibly do. Then you generally have 1 or 2 or 3 weeks where you think, well, it's July to December. I need to talk once about stewardship. So this is going to be sort of Stewardship Sunday. And we always introduce a new theme each year. And so you think, well, I got to introduce that theme. So that's usually going to be the first Sunday of September, the second Sunday of September. So we're going to add that. So at the end of this little planning session, or actually it's not the end, it's sort of the middle of the planning session, you now have at least a calendar with penciled in 26 sort of would-be topics, okay? Or ideas. Maybe ideas is a better word, ideas. And so you have that sort of penciled in, and I have my Bible in my hand, and I begin to think about, let's just pick out any given Sunday that you've got a Sunday that you're going to talk about stewardship. Well, you think about there's 6 or 8, 9, 10 passages that you look at, you read through, you think about what's most relevant for us right now. You think, well, maybe this is the best passage. So I just kind of pencil that in, maybe even 2 passages, just narrow it down to 2. And then let's say that back to that situation where you needed God's comfort. There was some situation in people's lives where the wheels were coming off the track and they just need some to know God's comfort. Well, there may be 3 or 4 stories that I think of immediately. And I may add to that by, cross-referencing something on the internet with something like stories about God's comfort. And you might find 3 or 4 more texts that you can use. And so I might end up writing down, 3 or 4 texts that's a possible use on that Sunday. So the success of that week, or that 2 days off or 2 days of preparing, the success of that is that, one, we have a calendar, and it's well balanced calendar. Every Sunday has something in it. There doesn't seem to be any duplicates, or if there is duplicates, sort of a minimum amount of duplicates. And not only do we have the topic or the idea, but we also have sort of the text for the day, or at least 2 or 3 options for the text of the day. And that's sort of the big picture. And that's something that makes the microcosm of preparing a sermon a little bit easier, because you've backed off and you've gotten the big picture. All right? Next week, we'll talk a little bit further.